There is a particular kind of pain that doesn't announce itself. It doesn't arrive like grief, loud and sudden and impossible to ignore. It arrives quietly, in the spaces between things, in the half-second before sleep, in the middle of a song you weren't even listening to, in the way a stranger's laugh sounds almost like someone you used to know. For Daniel Mercer, that pain had been a permanent resident for 7 years. He had learned to live around it the way you learn to live around a piece of furniture that doesn't belong, but that you've stopped noticing because it's always been there. He didn't talk about it. He worked. He went to the gym. He had drinks with colleagues on Friday evenings and laughed at the right moments and deflected the questions about why he was still single with a kind of easy charm that convinced most people he was fine. He was good at being fine. He had been practicing for 7 years. Her name was Claire Sutton, and she had been the kind of woman who rearranges your entire understanding of yourself just by being in the room. They had met at 31. In the lobby of a mutual friend's apartment building on a rainy October evening, she had been standing at the mailboxes, struggling with an umbrella that had folded inside out, and he had stopped to help without thinking about it, not as a gesture, just as reflex, and she had looked up at him with dark brown eyes and said, "I've been fighting this thing for 3 blocks. I'm losing." He had laughed. She had laughed. That was the whole beginning of it. They were together for 2 years. 2 years of Sunday farmers, markets and disagreements about thermostat settings, and inside, jokes that required 15 minutes of context to explain to anyone else. 2 years of her falling asleep on his shoulder during movies she had insisted on choosing. 2 years of learning that someone else's presence could restructure the entire feeling of a room, and that love, real love, has a specific weight to it, a density that you don't fully appreciate until it's no longer there. He ended it. That was the thing he lived with, not her leaving, his choosing. It hadn't been dramatic. There had been no betrayal, no explosion, no single unforgivable moment. He had been afraid. That was the whole truth of it, plain and unglamorous. He had felt the seriousness of what they were building together, and had looked at the permanence of it and flinched. He had told himself reasonable things, that they wanted different futures, that the timing wasn't right, that it was better to be honest now than to hurt her more later. He had constructed a very logical case for doing something that was, at its core, cowardice. Claire had listened to everything he said. She had sat across from him at the kitchen table in her apartment and listened with the kind of stillness that told him she had felt this coming even if she hadn't known the shape of it yet. When he finished, she had looked at him for a long moment and said, "Okay." Just that, "Okay." Then she had stood up and walked to the window and looked out at the street below. And he had understood in that moment that he was watching someone decide to survive him. He had left. She had let him. The first year after was the worst. He filled it with work and noise and told himself it would pass. It didn't pass. It settled, became part of the architecture of him, something load-bearing that he had to plan around. He thought about calling her more times than he could count. He never did. He had made his choice. Living with it was the only honest thing left. He heard through mutual friends that she had moved, then that she had been promoted, then eventually that she was seeing someone. That last piece of information arrived on a Tuesday afternoon via a text from his friend Marcus, meant kindly, delivered carelessly, and Daniel had read it in the parking garage at work and sat in his car for 20 minutes doing nothing at all. He told himself it was good, that she deserved it. Both of those things were true. They didn't help. 7 years passed. Now pay attention, because what happens next is the part that will make you question everything. You think you know about second chances, and about the price of them. Stay with me until the end. This story doesn't go where you think it's going. Daniel was 38 when his company relocated its regional office. New building, better location, modern space, the kind of announcement that arrives in an all-staff email and generates exactly 48 hours of conversation before everyone adjusts and moves on. He packed up his desk on a Friday, drove to the new address on a Monday morning, and took the elevator to the 7th floor without giving it much thought. He gave it thought on Wednesday. He was in the lobby at 8:47 in the morning, waiting for the elevator with a coffee in each hand, one for himself, one for his assistant Priya, who had a standing order of oat milk latte that he had memorized out of basics, human decency. When the glass doors at the front of the building opened and a woman walked in, from the street shaking rain from her umbrella. The umbrella was inside out. He saw that first. Then he saw her. Claire Sutton was 38 years old, and she was, without any effort or intention, still the most immediately recognizable person he had ever seen. Not because she looked the same. She didn't, not exactly. Her hair was shorter. There was a confidence in the way she moved that hadn't been fully formed 7 years ago, a kind of settled authority in her posture. But her eyes were identical. Dark brown, quick, taking in the room the way they always had. Cataloging. Assessing landing. They landed on him. The lobby was not large. There was no way to miss each other, and no graceful way to pretend otherwise. He watched her recognize him, watched it move across her face in a sequence. He couldn't fully read. Surprise. Then something controlled. Then a small, careful smile. Daniel. Claire. She looked at the 2 coffees in his hands and raised an eyebrow. Impressive. One of them is for someone else. That's a relief. The elevator arrived. They both got in. He pressed 7. She pressed 7. They stood on opposite sides of the elevator and said nothing for 3 floors. And the silence had 7 years of weight in it. And both of them could feel every pound. You work in this building, he said. 5th floor. As of 3 weeks ago. She looked straight ahead at the elevator doors. You? 7th. As of Monday. She nodded slowly. The elevator stopped at 5. She stepped out, then turned back briefly. Not fully, just enough to be heard. Well, she said. This should be interesting. The doors closed. He stood in the elevator holding 2 coffees and felt the floor of himself. Shift the way it does when something you thought was settled turns out not to be. They had no reason to interact. Different floors, different companies, different orbits entirely. But the building had a shared lobby, a shared coffee station on the ground floor, a shared parking structure. He saw her on Tuesdays and Thursdays, with a consistency that felt too precise to be random and was almost certainly just the natural result of 2 people on similar schedules arriving at similar times. He told himself that every time. The first real conversation happened 3 weeks in, at the coffee station at 7:50 in the morning when the machine jammed, and they both stood there in the particular fellowship of people defeated by office. Equipment before 9 a.m. She fixed it, knew exactly which panel to press, which button to hold, and handed him his cup without ceremony. And he said thank you, and she said you're welcome. And then neither of them left immediately. You look well, he said. Because it was true and because he didn't have anything better. So do you. She sipped her coffee. Are you? Am I what? Well, he considered lying. It would have been easy. He was practiced at it. Some days, he said instead. She looked at him over the rim of her cup with those cataloging eyes. Honest answer. I wasn't expecting that. I'm working on it. She almost smiled. Not quite. Good for you. She picked up her bag and walked toward the elevators. And he stood at the coffee station and understood that something had just changed. Not dramatically. Not with ceremony, but the way temperature changes. Gradually and then all at once. They started talking. Not pursuing. Neither of them was reckless enough for that. But talking. In the lobby, at the coffee station. Occasionally in the parking structure at the end of the day. Short conversations that both of them kept deliberately light. She told him she had made senior partner at her firm. He told her his division had tripled since the last office. They talked about the building's terrible HVAC system and a good Thai restaurant 2 blocks away and a documentary they had both apparently watched the same week without knowing it. They did not talk about what had happened. It was there, present in every conversation. The way a third person in the room is present, even when silent, but neither of them reached for it. He understood she had earned that boundary. He respected it completely. What he did not respect, apparently, was his own better judgment. Because 6 weeks into this careful arrangement, on a Thursday evening, when the building had mostly emptied and they had both ended up at the elevator, bank at the same time with the exhausted ease of people at the end of a long week, he said, quietly, without planning it, without a strategy, I owe you an apology. A real one, not an explanation. Just, I'm sorry, Claire, for what I did, for how I did it. She stood very still. The elevator arrived and neither of them got in. It closed again. 7 years later, she said. Not accusatory, just noting it. I know. Why now? Because I see you twice a week and I can't keep pretending I don't have something to say. She was quiet for a long moment. The building hummed around them, outside the windows. The city was going about its evening, without any awareness of the 2 people standing at the elevator, bank with 7 years between them. I accepted it a long time ago, Daniel, she said finally.
I had to.
I couldn't carry it and also have a life. She paused. But thank you for saying it. That's more grace than I deserve. Probably. A small smile this time, real, not careful. Good night. She got in the elevator. He took the stairs. He didn't sleep well that night. But it was a different kind of sleeplessness than the one he had practiced for 7 years. Less like an open wound, more like something trying to close. They had dinner the following week. She suggested it, lightly, almost offhandedly, over coffee on a Tuesday. And he said yes before his caution could catch up with him. They went to the Thai place 2 blocks away and split an order of dumplings and talked. For 3 hours, and he remembered, in real time, what it had felt like to be known by her. The specific ease of it, the way conversation with Claire had never required effort, only honesty. He drove home that night certain of exactly one thing, that he was still, irreversibly, in love with her, that nothing had changed in 7 years except his understanding of his own cowardice and his absolute unwillingness to repeat it. He told her. Not that night. 2 weeks later, on a Sunday afternoon when she had texted asking if he wanted to walk to the farmer's market, which was the kind of detail that would not have been significant to anyone who hadn't spent 2 years going to farmers' markets with her on Sunday mornings, but which landed on him with the full weight of everything it echoed. He met her there. They walked. They bought coffee from a vendor and stood in the pale November light among the stalls. And he said without preamble, without performance, I never stopped. I need you to know that. Whatever you do with it, I needed to say it out loud. Claire looked at the cup in her hands. Then she looked at him. And in her expression he saw something that was not what he had hoped for, not the clean. Redemptive, yes, he had quietly built a small hope around. What he saw was more complicated than that, sadder and more honest. Daniel, she said quietly, I need to tell you something. He waited. I'm engaged. The farmer's market kept moving around them. Someone laughed nearby. A child pulled at a parent's hand. The world continued its ordinary motion with complete indifference to the fact that Daniel Mercer had just understood, clearly and finally, the full cost of the choice he had made 7 years ago. His name is Patrick, she said. We've been together for 3 years. He's a good man. He's exactly what I needed. She said it without cruelty, with the honesty she had always given him, even when he hadn't deserved it. I moved on, Daniel. I really did. And I need you to know that I'm glad I did. Because I'm happy? I'm actually happy. He nodded. He kept his face composed with everything he had. He's lucky, he said. And I mean that. She touched his arm, briefly, gently. You're going to be okay. You know that, right? Yeah, he said. Working on it. She smiled, the real one, not the careful one, and squeezed his arm once and then let go. They walked back through the market in a quiet that was different from all the other quiets. This one had a conclusion in it, a shape, something that had finally, after 7 years, been allowed to finish. He did not go home and fall apart. He had expected to. Instead, he drove to Marcus's apartment and sat on the couch and told him everything, all of it, from the lobby to the farmer's market, and Marcus listened without interrupting, which was unusual for Marcus. And when Daniel finished, Marcus said, So what are you going to do? Daniel thought about it, about Claire's face when she said she was happy, about the specific way she had said it, not as consolation, not as performance, but as simple fact. She was happy. She had built something real, and he, Daniel Mercer, had spent 7 years circling the wreckage of his own choice like it was a monument rather than a mistake. I'm going to stop waiting, he said. For her, for something to fix itself, for time to run backward. All of it. And then I'm going to figure out who I am, without that as the center of everything. It was not a dramatic resolution. It did not arrive with music or with the sensation of a burden lifting. It arrived the way most true things arrive, quietly, plainly, without fanfare. But it was real. For the first time in 7 years, it was genuinely real. He saw Claire in the lobby the following Tuesday. She was with a tall man with an easy smile, both of them laughing at something as they came through the glass doors. She looked up, saw Daniel, and gave him a small nod. Natural, unguarded. 2 people who knew each other and were fine. He nodded back. He meant it. He took the stairs to 7, sat down at his desk, opened his laptop. Outside the window, the city moved in its ordinary way, indifferent and continuous and full. And Daniel Mercer, 38 years old, finally understood that the story he had been telling himself for 7 years, the one where Claire was the thing he was waiting to return to, had never been the real story at all. The real story was everything he had refused to build while he was busy waiting. He picked up his phone and made a call he had been putting off for 2 months, a dinner with an old friend, a conversation he'd been avoiding, a version of his life he hadn't yet had the courage to walk into. The phone rang twice. "Hello?" "Hey," he said. "I'm sorry I've been hard to reach. I'm ready now." He meant it about the dinner. He meant it about everything. Love, real love, doesn't always come back to you. Sometimes it moves on and builds something beautiful without you. And sometimes the most important thing, the thing that saves you, is finally letting it. Daniel Mercer had spent 7 years learning that lesson. He was a slow learner, but he got there. And outside on the street below, in a city full of people carrying their own quiet weights, the world kept moving, ordinary, relentless, and wide open. If this story made you feel something real, if you've ever held on too long to something that had already found its peace without you, share this with someone who needs to hear it. Like this video, subscribe to this channel. Every story here is made for the ones who feel deeply and love honestly. We'll see you in the next one.